So thank God we had this arrangement before uh, these extremist groups became a serious problem with us. And so,
So the work the NSA did was incredibly important to the nation, and still is.
and still is, because the last three recent attempts to after 9/11 uh, have been very amateurish and easily caught, because they cannot, like it was the shoe bomber and the underwear bomber, and now the um, Times Square bomb, that was, all of these were unsuccessful because they had to be operations of just a few people involved, and amateur people and people who would be in this country anyhow. Because if you have a big organization attempting some kind of an attack like the 9/11, which then a combination of all of our intelligence will find them out. So the only thing they have left is taking people who are American citizens or have other reasons to be in this country, and have them to, on a shoestring arrangement, try to do something uh,
Now, if we can't break their
deceptive.
codes, how do we find them out? And
Well, we can't find out these. We cannot find out these people who are like the underwear bomber. There's no way of finding them out. We're just going to have to be vigilant about watching them, uh, and we're just going to lose a few. We'll do the best we can, but the one of the attacks that they're using is for NSA to have in storage everyone's telephone number and everyone's email address, and have a record of all of their communication. And if you have a record of all their communication, you've got so much data that you don't know what to do with it. And so they're now working out some way to filter these data so that it will be of value to them.
so you don't know what they're saying if they're using this encryption, like the PGP program by Phil Zimmerman. You don't know what they're saying, but you know that they're saying something, and you know to whom they're saying it,
The
for the
trap
most part.
the traffic analysis is a very powerful tool, and when I was at ASA, which my Army MOS was traffic handler, they'd make these examples of you took someone who was some kind of had some idiosyncrasy, and with just knowing who they talked to, and who they called on the phone, and who they wrote letters to, you would know that you could know who the people were that also had that idiosyncrasy that they touched on. In those days, they used as an example the idiosyncrasy of homosexuality, which was in those days, believe it or not, was taboo, and so they used that as an example in training people for traffic analysis. But traffic analysis is about all they have left, and that and other human intelligence, sending people out in and infiltrating, is all they have, and that's the status of things right now. But the important thing is that even though they do have to listen in on people's phone calls, uh, they should be required to have congressional oversight, because the history is such uh, that NSA has had no congressional oversight, because it was once upon a time necessary that they not have congressional oversight, and we have continued that uh, tradition in this country, and that should really be changed.
And the reason you touched on it before, the reason that they used to need to have no congressional oversight is the absolute necessity to conceal the fact that they were breaking the codes of these other countries, and how easy it was for the other countries to change the code that they were using. But now that that is no longer in the picture, that secrecy is not required. Everyone knows that phone calls and emails and things are being tracked. That's been in the news for a long time. So I think what you're saying is all of the reasons for that secrecy have gone for those reasons.
All those reasons for that secrecy have gone, but you've got to understand too that Congress is elected people, and some of the people you elect to Congress sometimes they aren't very swift. And it's possible for them to not be very prudent people, and that's as Churchill said. Democracy is not a very good system, but he'd never heard of a better one, and a better one hasn't come up that we know of. And so there are shortcomings in democracy. One of them is that you can't stop a congressman from getting on the floor of Congress and saying anything he wants to say. Sometimes very stupid things, and sometimes very brilliant things. And so, because of the nature of our government, we have to have congressional oversight. We wouldn't have survived all these 200 and some years having not had a stable system which has congressional oversight. And the other point is that we don't know where this technology is going to take us as far as personal privacy is concerned. And we have to, for the first time in history, make a trade-off between personal privacy and what's good for the people, the nation, and what's good for the individual's personal safety. And these trade-offs didn't have to be made previously, because when the Constitution says that someone's home is their castle, and they can't just randomly come into your home and your private papers and your private information, it wasn't, if they didn't do that, it wasn't detrimental to the country. But now they're going to have to a certain extent, invade people's privacy. And when you invade people's privacy, you have to have it done legally and prudently. And that's what the trade-offs and one of the decisions that have to be made in the future.
So you're writing a book where you discuss all of this and much more in a lot of detail. Wonderful, entertaining stories about how you came to be in the different positions that you were in, and as well as what the NSA used to be, how and why it transformed, and something about what it's transformed into today. What's the name of your book?
The name of the book is NSA and CIA and how they deceived the Congress and the people.
And it's coming out in 2010?
Yes, and
the publisher?
The publisher will be
Algora
Publishing
Algora
in New York
Publisher.
City.
Yeah.
But part of the reason I put a lot of personal stuff in the book was that if someone says, well, I happened to be at the meeting when they decided that NSA would do this and CIA would do that, and we made a plan, people would say, well, you can just make that up. So if you don't tell a personal background of how you got there and why you were there, then they have no reason to believe what you say about being there. And so I had to include a lot of personal stuff that explains